Why do people feel that some animals are pets and some are food?
Well, coming back to what I had just said, Carnism teaches us to classify certain animals as edible and other animals we continue to see as inedible. And Carnism is why, we can harbor very different attitudes and have very different feelings and behaviors toward different types of species.
Is there such a thing as humane meat? What if an animal is raised outside with lots of grass, nature, sunshine, and space to walk around?
And this idea of humanely produced carnistic products, what I call compassionate carnism, is really irrational, but it's only possible to appreciate just how irrational it is when we step outside of that carnistic box. So, for example, most of us would consider it cruel to slaughter a happy, healthy golden retriever simply because people like the way her thighs taste. And yet, when this exact same thing is done to individuals of other species, we're taught to consider that humane. And in some ways, it might even be more problematic to slaughter the happy animal who has a life they want to continue living, and who perhaps has formed friendships and bonds with other individuals who will then grieve when this one is killed.
When trying to influence people to change their diet, should we say go vegan or should we say go as vegan as possible?
I always recommend asking people to be as vegan as possible. I mean, first of all, this is the only rational ask, right? Because nobody can do anything that's not possible. Nobody can do more than what's possible for them. And what's possible is what a person feels is possible for them. And so asking someone to be as vegan as possible is not only rational, it's also respectful. It's really important that we not make ourselves the experts on another individual's experience and place ourselves in a position of dictating what is and is not possible for them. We really have to allow people to be the experts on their experience. I had somebody once insist that I should be a fruitarian. And I kept saying, but it's not possible. And they said, but Melanie, it is possible. You live across the street from Whole Foods. This was when I still lived in the US. And they had all these reasons as to why it really was possible for me. So on a practical level, it was, but it didn't feel possible for me. So asking people to be as vegan as possible, also prevents this sort of all or nothing thinking that can make people throw up their hands and say, why bother even trying? The perfect really is in many ways the enemy of the good. It also reduces people's defensiveness against the ask. I mean, often many vegans will say, all I have to do is say I'm vegan and I feel like I'm hit by this wall of defenses, which is, of course, what carnism causes people to do, is to act defensive. But when we ask people to be as vegan as possible, they're a lot less defensive. And frankly, if everyone became as vegan as possible, the world would become vegan fairly quickly.
Do people understand how animals raised for food are treated? Is it important to educate people about this, or does it just create more resistance?
It's absolutely important to raise awareness about this issue. One of the ways that carnism keeps itself alive is by remaining invisible. If we can't see it, we can't challenge it. We can't think about it. We can't talk about it. We can't challenge it. So we absolutely need to make the reality of what's happening visible. And how we make the invisible visible matters very much. So many vegans or people who are working to raise awareness of animal agriculture, understandably recognize that most people's tendency is to turn away from images of animals suffering. Because getting back to what I said earlier, we care. Humans are hardwired to feel empathy. It hurts us to see them hurting. So the tendency is to look away. We need to help people become aware, and we need to honor this tendency to look away and the fact that seeing this reality can be traumatizing for people. And so the way that we share the information needs to be respectful and not creating more violence in the process. So a lot of times the vegans will try to shock people and say, gotcha, here it is. The problem with that is that many people can experience that behavior as a form of emotional violence, which it is. and can end up traumatized by it and then becoming angry at the vegan who they feel has victimized them, rather than angry at the real problem, which is the system and the businesses, the industries that are causing the suffering and the bloodshed in the first place. So I always recommend letting people know that you want to raise awareness, letting them know why it's important, getting their consent, and using as little imagery as possible. We don't need to bang people over the head to make them get it. It only takes a few seconds.
People are told eating animals is normal and natural and necessary. Is that really true? Why are these beliefs so accepted by so many people?
Yeah, well, I write about in my book, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, which is about carnism. I deconstruct the carnistic system and talk about the various carnistic defenses, one of which is justification. And the way that we learn to justify animals, I explain, is by learning to believe that the myths of meat, eggs, and dairy are the facts of meat, eggs, and dairy. We learn to believe in what I call the 3 N's of justification, that eating animals is normal, natural, and necessary. These arguments basically have been used to justify violent practices, of course, throughout human history, from male dominance to heterosexual supremacy. Most people do not realize, most people assume that beliefs that are so widespread, that are embraced and maintained by all major social institutions, that they must be facts rather than a widely held set of opinions. And so, a part of the work that we need to do, a big part of the work that we need to do, is to really raise awareness, not just of the consequences of animal agriculture, but also of the mentality, the system carnism that is at the root of some of these behaviors, the belief system that causes us to check our critical thinking at the door whenever conversations about eating animals come up.